very welcome back to the show. Our news panel are on the way, but before that, today is World Bee Day, and our resident folklorist and beekeeper Shane Lahan is here to give us the history of the humble bumblebee.
Not the bumblebee.
Not the bumblebee. What's the difference between a bee and a bumblebee then?
Well, the honeybee, they live in huge colonies,
Yeah.
70,000 in the colony, whereas the little bumblebees, they have a little small little place in the ground and so on. But you know, Donny, it was interesting. I wrote a paper recently on the prehistoric account of the bees when they came to Ireland and so on and so forth, you know. We haven't got great evidence at all, but I'm nearly certain that the bees were here. We know genetically they were here, but they used to live in the trees, in the hollowed out trees in the past. And what would happen is that it's only when Christianity comes, really, that we get the first full accounts of the bees in Ireland. This is a Leicester. Do you see this lovely photograph here? I took this out in Blarney, out in the estate, where they keep the hollowed out logs that are there. But long ago, the saints, for example, used to come along, and they used to their mothers used to. St. Patrick, for example, his mother used to say to him, "Why don't you collect the honey from the woodland like the other boys used to do, or the other and so on, the other children used to do?" So we know that honey was collected from the wild, but it was only when Christianity comes in that really they came in for one reason, and that was for wax, because the candle became all important in the past. So here I have a lovely medieval candle, if you like, but not just for the candle, for something else as well. And I spent the weekend making this example for you. This is what we call a polera.
A polera.
A polera, an early Irish word.
Yeah.
What it was a piece of wood, okay, and they had the beeswax inside. And what used to happen is that when you were learning to write, and I'll write your name here, Dahi, okay?
Oh yeah, see that.
Can you see that there?
Yeah.
What used to happen is that you could learn how to write, instead of using the calf skin, the vellum, you learn to write on this, and when you were finished that, what you could do is put it by the fire, where you could melt it down, and you could write it away again.
How clever.
Oh, it was brilliant. So we have these in our National Museum, again, some of the earliest writing that we have. So Christianity, if you like, brings in a new type of beekeeping. And in fact, we have one of the old Brehon laws, what we call Bec Breha, bee judgments, translated by the great, or an edition done by the great Fergus Kelly, one of my great pals, okay, from the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies. But we know all about the early beekeeping and the way bees were kept and so on. And what I love is that there are stories in Ireland about the saints that brought the bees to Ireland.
Now, is it true St. Gobnet?
Yeah, so Gobnet is fantastic. Before I talk about Gobnet, I want to mention, well, here's Gobnet, okay, as she's here now. I got this lovely image of Gobnet from Rainvile House, fantastic Rainvile House. This is a lovely image made by Lily Yeats, William Butler Yeats' sister, believe it or not, okay? Goes back to that time. But the story of Gobnet, of course, is the great beekeeper. The O'Donohues were coming on a cattle raid, and the O'Hurleys were off, and they were down in your part of the world in Kerry. They were doing a bit of hunting down there, and there was nobody left to mind anyone except Gobnet. And what Gobnet did was that to protect everyone, she took up her beeskep, like we have here, she threw it at the gang. The bees came out, and the bees stung all of the O'Donohues that were there, and they had to run away and so on. So Gobnet is the great patron saint of the beekeepers. But there was another chap, Modownach, and Modownach is fantastic. He came from County Kilkenny, a place called Tibrockney. And Tibrockney, he went over to St. David's in Wales, where he was learning a few things from David, minding the bees over there. When he was coming back to Ireland, didn't all the bees follow him? And he went back 3 times, and David eventually said, "Listen, take the bees with you, put your fill of your bell," his monastic bell, and he took the bees over to Ireland with him. So according to tradition, he was the man who first brought bees to the country. So the very fact that we have Gobnet, we have another guy called Lochteen, who I shouldn't forget as well, and of course Modownach, all of that would suggest to me that when Christianity came in, it really brought in what we would call modern beekeeping today.
And when did we realise then that, I suppose, honey, could be used in cooking?
Yeah, so we have some really great sources, Nuala, absolutely great. One I brought in just to show you. We have a lovely text from the 11th century called the Ashling of Vic-Conglina. And what's interesting in this is that it gives us the best account of cooking that you could ever imagine. Kevin Dundon would love this now, okay? So what we have is that in that account, he takes pieces of meat, pieces of bacon, pieces of corned beef, pieces of full-fleshed vetter, which would have been a ram and so on.
Yeah.
He comes along, he puts it on these wonderful, this is one of my students, Alan, he's Slocum, he drew this for me, puts them in front of the fire. You see the vertical spits
Yeah.
like that, covered it with honey and with salt.
Oh,
So what you get is a lovely caramelized,
Honey
very,
glaze.
very sweet, salty taste and so on. Now all the juice is kept inside. So we have in our accounts of cooking this wonderful use of honey as well.
Yeah. What about booze then as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say mead. Isn't that the
Yeah.
honey
Well,
wine?
mead is there as well, and we've plenty of examples of mead. It was the drink of the elite that were there and so on. And in particular, then you had various braggot, which was a mixture of ale and mead as well. And then you had a kind of a one which was almost hydromel, which was like a kind of almost like a sparkling drink altogether. So we had all these different levels that were there. Listen, the honeybee is responsible for all those wonderful tastes and flavors and wonderful elements like that.
Yeah, I love it. Did you make the candle yourself, Shane?
I did. Listen, on a Sunday afternoon when you know you're coming on, there I am melting down the beeswax and so on. But you know, I wanted it to look, because people made it in different ways. They
Yeah.
didn't have the ways in which we see candles today. But the smell of that candle and the purity of it,
Yeah.
there's no smoke, there's nothing. It was actually a huge part of the ritual of the early church. They put more store in the kind of purity of that candle than almost anything else. It was absolutely true.
And you have your own honey. You have to leave that behind now for me.
Listen, absolutely, Nola, you'll be welcome to that. But what I love about that particular honey, that was the late honey this year. This was the ivy honey,
Mhm.
okay? And there's a little bit of heather in that as well. And the wax is up on top of it. I think it's really important. If you look at the honeys now, they're all refined,
Mhm.
they're all heated. When you get all the enzymes, this is alive, it's a
The
gorgeous
real deal.
flavour. That's absolutely fantastic.
Well, that's my breakfast sorted with a bit of brown bread tomorrow.
She was fasting there with that one. Shane, thank you.
Thanks
a million,
Always
Shane.
great to have you. This competition time now. And the Wizard of All Stars.